Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live recording today. We're recording the podcast. For those of you who are jumping on, people are just starting to get the interwebs are just starting to let people know we're here through the magic of social media. So, how are you, Miles?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm up in Vancouver and we have a rare day of sunshine today, and we have been hit by like the worst floods we've seen in 40 years. And I'm downtown, so I'm okay, but I got a lot of friends out in the suburbs, and it is brutal. Like, no, can't even drive out to see them right now.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Um,
And then it's starting up again this week. So I guess we're getting like a double duty of rain Mageddon.
oh man, yikes.
Yeah.
Well, shoot, man. I
How
hope
are you? How's Connecticut? I'm guessing better than here.
Connecticut is, it's getting cold. I was out walking this morning. It was, 20s, man, already.
20s?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
Early in the morning, it's like 25 degrees. It was freezing. So I
Well,
was, yeah, it's wintertime already here.
well, it's not
You're in
that
a,
cold here yet, thankfully.
how cold does it get in Vancouver? Because Vancouver is not terribly, like, it's not as cold as some parts of Canada. I mean, Canada's
Well, no,
huge.
it's nowhere near as cold as you. Like our coldest day of the year might be, low 20s. But that's very rare. So, like, I would say right now we're probably at, like, I don't know, 50.
Wow, that's
Just doing,
nice.
I'm just doing the math in my head. I'm like, what's that? Celsius to Fahrenheit?
Celsius.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
25 Fahrenheit. That
yeah,
was
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, like, 32 is where it freezes. So yeah, like we barely get below 20 ever. And then,
right.
you go into the middle of the country and you're getting, minus 10s, minus 20s, and
Right.
it's freezing. It's not enjoyable
Right.
there.
And Celsius is so correct me if I'm wrong because I'm a stupid American. Is Celsius is easier because technically 0 is freezing.
Well, yeah,
Yes?
it's simple. Like right now, like today, what am I at today? I'm at weather. Okay, so it's a high of 8 and a low of 4. So that's like 8 would be like 45, 50
Right.
in that range. And then 4 is like, 39 or 40.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's we should all have one system. It should all be like universal, you know?
Well, I think there's only 3 countries in the world that have your system, which are
Right.
the US, parts of the UK uses both. And then, if you can believe it, Burma, or I guess some people call it Myanmar now.
So we need to the United States needs to get with the game.
Well, I mean, 195 countries do it our way, and then
Right. That's all.
you other 3 do it your way, right? So, it's a tough one. I mean, I grew up, like, being born in England myself. I grew up knowing miles and kilometers because my dad always speaks in miles because I can't believe I just said that. Yeah, his name is Miles and I'm Miles, but he also speaks in miles because he grew up in East Africa and the old British Commonwealth countries. So he always speaks in miles still to this day, even though I get annoyed with him. But yeah, we all use kilometers here. So there you
Right.
go.
Well, we'll catch up someday.
Yeah, all good.
So I'm going to kick off. So what we do on this live, Miles, and
Yeah.
everybody who's listening live, we record the podcast here live, the Elevating IT podcast. So in a moment, I'm going to turn down the volume, and we'll do a little intro. But first, why don't you do this, Miles? Give me a little tease for what you're going to talk about today. Give me maybe a nugget that
All
I can
right.
put, and then I'll through the magic of editing, I'll take that little nugget, give me like 30 seconds to a minute, and I'll put it on the top before the intro, and it'll sound like I'm a professional
Oh,
podcaster.
I love this. Okay, I'll even do this. I'll even count down. Miles Walker here, channel development manager for Graphus. So excited today to be talking to obviously everyone in Mike's aura and sphere of influence. I'm going to be talking about selling cybersecurity through education and not fear.
That was great. Okay, let's go do an intro.
All right. I'm just
And
gonna
now
throw my
here's
light.
this episode of the Elevating IT podcast, sponsored by Audit.
And welcome to the Elevating IT podcast. My name is Mike Brooks. I am your host, and I am here with the lovely and talented Miles Walker from Graphus.
I will take that intro, Mike. Thank you.
I have applause on this soundboard, but I'm not fast enough to switch it and do. Wait a minute. I have Miles Walker from Graphus.
Woo!
Oops, I got to turn down. Wait, there we go.
There you go.
All right, that was about as terrible as it gets. So, Miles, thank you for being here today.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. It's good to see you virtually. Now that we've actually met in person, it's kind of fun to do this. I actually know some people now after the last few months.
That's right. We met in Las Vegas a month ago now at the end of October, and it was a blast. I've known you for a long time, and I got to tell you, like, people who know Miles, people who know you, know that when you walk into a room, the room kind of gets more energy. Like you just bring an energy to the room, and it's just fantastic to know you and call you a friend. And it was a blast hanging out with you. We were at Connect IT in Las Vegas, and finally got to meet you in person. So
yeah, it was great. I got to meet you. I think I got to meet about 5 or 6 people that I've been wanting to meet for ages, and it was so nice to be able to do that kind of in a laid back environment. Obviously, during the day we were in our sessions, but then at night, we got to hang out and let our hair down, so to speak.
That's awesome. And just to introduce you to people a little bit more, a little deeper, you're with Graphus, which is a pretty cool company, man. We started using Graphus in our own, Frank De Benedetto, our founder, actually uses Graphus.
Oh, wow. I don't even think I knew that. Okay.
Yep. So he controls the buttons with Audit. So now Audit uses Graphus, and it's pretty cool. So I've been very familiar with this. So I'll have to give you guys a shout out that it's a fantastic product.
Oh, I love to hear that. I always say as well, I mean, we became part of the Kaseya family in July 2020, and we'd actually used the product at Kaseya for about 18 months before the company made the purchase, I guess you'd say, and got involved. And I don't want to use the cliche term eating our own dog food, but that's basically what we did at Kaseya. And from there on out, everyone uses it here, and growth has been so good over the last year since I've come on. Sales are going up and up and up, and it's been great.
That's awesome. Well, today we're going to talk about a really cool topic, and I'm sure, you're going to bring a little bit of Graphus into this, and
Sure.
Anybody who's listening, we want to make sure we educate them on what Graphus does. So feel free to share, because I think it's an important, it's an important thing. And you were specifically brought you on here, or you came on here specifically to talk about selling cybersecurity with education as opposed to fear. And I think that's such a great topic because, I love, as a marketing person, I love using fear. I love using emotion. And I think there is a place for that, but ultimately education gets you much further, right? I think fear gets attention. That's a good thing, but education is what really moves the needle. So I love that topic. So tell me, like, what's your approach to that? Like, why do you approach it that way?
Well, I love that. I think you make a great point, because fear will sometimes get you into the door, if you're trying to make a sale, but it won't keep you there. Right. And you have to educate people. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that I've learned over the past year is that there are so many horror stories out there. I mean, I could do hours, Mike, just talking to you about all the different breaches that have happened, all the different industries that have happened. And that's great if that's how you want to sell your product. But I love taking like practical examples. So for example, say you're talking to a small business that's 15 people or less. They're going to probably say something along the lines of, well, I don't think that'll happen to me. They're not going after the low hanging fruit. And showing them actual examples of companies that are kind of on their level, I think that makes way better business sense than just trying to terrify them, because most small companies don't think this is going to happen to them.
That's a great point. It's, you know, and again, I love talking. I love, it is a really scary thing. I don't, where do you kind of walk that fine line? Because you want to make sure people are, I guess the right way to say is you want to make sure they're educated that they should be afraid of this.
Well, yeah. I mean, when we say we want to educate through or we want to teach or sell through education, there's going to be some little fear strand that comes in. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, who are most of the clients that you speak with every day? Like, what size businesses are they working with?
So yeah, I mean, we're straight, in the MSP industry. So all of our clients are MSPs, and they're, I mean, our clients range from one, usually more than one. They're a little bit more mature MSP, but a couple people MSP to 20, 30, that size company. And of course, they're dealing with tons and tons of different companies, obviously themselves.
Sure. And I think that's how you kind of want to tailor your approach. So say, for example, you've got an MSP, just down the road from you in Connecticut, and, they're working with a manufacturer. They could go in and say, oh yeah, Colonial Pipeline, one of the largest pipelines in the world got breached recently and had to pay a $7 million ransom. But if their manufacturing company they're working with only has, 150 workers, that probably won't compute to a threat to them. But if you actually find manufacturing companies that have been hit that are in a similar maybe industry category and size of people, those I think really hit home the most, because if your neighbor is getting hit by a cyber breach, you're going to think twice. But if there's somebody who lives in, I don't know, rural Tennessee and you're based in Connecticut, there's no connection for you. So it's really finding those stories and teaching them about what happened with other companies, so that they can realize that, hey, this is something that I have to be made aware of and I have to take protections.
Right. And that's probably when you arm your clients at Graphus, do you do a lot of teaching, a lot of helping them to sell and
Of
educating them
course.
on how to educate? So talk to me about because I'm always interested, audit's a sales tool,
Mhm.
and we help they use audit to help sell all of the different things, right? So you're a part of an audit report, like all the other things in the channel. And I'm always curious on what your approach is to training your MSPs, your clients, to train their clients and to educate how you approach, because it's one thing for you to talk, you to educate them, right, on this, but how do you educate them on how to educate their clients, if that makes sense?
Of course. No, I mean, well, I like to take a little bit more of a utopian approach. I get you throwing a big word there, Mike. I like to kind of go back to where cybersecurity started. And I know it might sound a little archaic, but if I'm talking to an MSP and all they know about cybersecurity is what is in front of them. Okay, they know that there's a breach here, there's a breach there. I find it's so interesting to give them a little bit of background and tell them the story about where cyber attacks came from. Like, most people don't know that the Morris worm was kind of the first cyber attack, which happened in 1988. So I like to kind of
Swarm. Wait a minute, you got to tell me about that now.
Okay, so an American scientist, he created this bug which infected a whole bunch of computers. Basically, that's
Hmm.
the simple layman's term for it. Okay, and then probably right after that, John McAfee came out with his security program in the 90s. Lots of people look to the AIDS Trojan, which is one of the first cyber attacks that happen on a wide scale. And I love to kind of dive into a few of these like old gems. And why I do that is because it was such a simple time back then.
Yeah.
And people didn't even think that you could get a virus that infects your computer. The one that I've been starting to talk about a lot more is, remember when everyone used to use USBs, and you would transfer files on USB. And now that is one of the main ways where attacks happen, is people will leave USBs around, and now people are getting smarter, at least in our industry, about plugging them into a computer. But that's like one of the biggest no-nos when I talk to someone. Never plug an unknown USB into a computer, because that's how viruses are getting passed these days. And if you can believe it, I have a new MacBook, and they don't even have USB ports for one of those reasons.
I know. Oh, that's the I thought the reason was to annoy the daylights out of me.
Well, also that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it can be annoying. But if we hop back to the Morris worm, Robert Morris, right now, well, after he got busted by putting out the Morris worm, he ended up doing, I think it was 400 hours of community service, $10,000 fine, and now he's the head of computer science and AI technology at MIT. So it just shows, like,
crime does pay.
Sorry?
Crime does pay.
Well, this is the thing that I've learned over these last 6 months when I'm talking to different thought leaders. There's no computers right now that I know of that are locked inside of a jail. And why? Because people have to obviously operate those computers, and the people behind them aren't usually ever busted for what they do, and they'll get a slap on the wrist, like with Robert Morris. What was the one that I heard recently? There was a huge Twitter hack that came out last year, and $1.2 million was stolen from various celebrity accounts. They fished through celebrity accounts. So, for example, I know Obama got breached. I know Elon Musk did, and they had a link to a charity that one of them was pushing or promoting, and they had their Twitter accounts get hacked, and the money went to a private account, which was supposed to be for charity, but it was a 16-year-old kid in his parents' basement, and he had pulled off this elaborate scam. And what did the U.S. government do when they found out? Did they throw him in jail and make him serve time? No, they gave him a job.
That's unbelievable.
And these are the kind of stories that you hear all the time. And, you know, cyber crimes, if a criminal gang broke into Colonial Pipeline and, I don't know, played around with their computers on site, they would be in prison for many years. But
Right.
because they did it behind the safety of a computer, they don't really get in trouble.
As long as this is not the computer in the place. That's amazing. You know, I didn't think I knew that, and just didn't occur to me until you started talking about it, that it's like all of these, you know, there's companies and people that are keynote speakers, and, you know, they get big bucks, who were former bad guys who got caught. Now they're good guys. It's like,
well, speaking of that, I don't think I have the book. Oh, actually, I do. This is not a plug of his book, but I got to interview this guy.
I saw the interview. That was a great interview. I saw part of it.
So Tony, he stole $50 million from governments, banks, businesses all over Europe. And I think he said in about 2003 or 2004, he went from, you know, doing the Ocean's 11 style heists with a team of guys to going online. And he started doing a lot of mortgage fraud and a few other things. And he said to me, he's like, Miles, there's no computer. That's where I got that line from. There's no computer that's sitting right now in prison, because that's just the way the world is. So you can pull off a heist or a scam online. You don't get the same kind of jail time. He ended up going to prison for 1.5 years for passport fraud, because that's the only thing they could find him. They could find on him.
Do you think that's going to change? I mean, you know, it seems like we're at the beginning of this, even though you bring up a good point. You know, I mean, I had my first computer. I mean, I had a Commodore 64 when I was a kid.
I had one of those.
We've had computers in our family since the early days. And you know, I've had computers for years, and I don't remember the first time that I was actually worried about a virus, but I'm sure it was in the 90s, and I'd already had computers for years. You know, they were real simple back then. It's like they wreck your hard drive and that's pretty much it. Now it's like they can empty your bank account. They can empty your friend's bank. You know, it's like they can really do there's some serious harm. This is crazy stuff. And it's really within the past few years that we've been seeing the magnitude of this. I mean, do you think we're at the beginning of this where those things will change? Maybe these guys will end up in jail.
I mean, I've seen a few recently. I've seen, like, there's some Ukrainian and Belarusian hackers that have got, I won't even say substantial jail time, but, you know, 4 to 6 years. And that was the most we've heard. And, you know, I think they will change, but they have to kind of come together and almost make like a world, I don't even know what you call it, a world policy maybe, because, you know, if there's a hacker in the Ukraine, how can someone in America, like deal with that. You need help from the Ukrainian government, for example, right? I mean, even if you're going to do Canada American laws, something in Canada might not be the same as something in America. I know we have websites like Pirate Bay, which are illegal in America, and in Canada they're still legal. So they have to kind of come up with like a governing body, like almost like a cybersecurity governing body that would fall under the UN, that has like, a code of conduct, so that people can be busted, because it's not like a lot of these hackers are actually, down the street from you. They're actually in different countries or different cities.
Right. And which country is like the best country to go if I want to be a hacker?
I mean,
where they can't get me.
I mean, Russia and China, and that's partly to do with their extradition laws. So, I mean, we all know the story of Edward Snowden. He's had safe harbor in Russia now for, 7 or 8 years. And, that's not going to change. They're not going to change the extradition laws on him. And China, they have their own laws. So, I mean, if you really wanted to be a hacker, those would be the 2 trophy spots to go, I guess. But you probably have to learn Chinese or Russian.
And I'd have to learn how to hack. I can destroy my own computer. I'm really good at messing up my own devices, but I'm not good at any of the other things that are needed to probably do that. You need a lot more technical skill than I have.
Well, if you can believe it, nowadays you can actually buy phishing kits on the web, on the dark web. So this would have never been a thing like 3 or 4 years ago.
So I could buy a starter phishing kit. Do they make like starter phishing kits for dummies, or do you have to be technically skilled?
Mean, you have to have some skill. You probably have to have a programmer baseline, but I mean, you can go on to Tor and log into the dark web and actually buy these phishing kits now, and they're real time. They look incredible. I mean, I've seen a lot of them, but it's not just phishing kits that they're selling on the dark web. I mean, they're doing how-tos to different types of phishing. I don't know. Have you heard of the term smishing?
No.
Smishing is SMS text phishing, and that's now the big one, because only about 20% of emails actually get opened, but about 98% of text messages get opened. So people are realizing you have to come up with new ways. I recently had an attack on myself, which was done through Instagram, and someone had created a fake Instagram account, and they based it off of a contest on a real Instagram account. And I won a few free nights at a hotel, and I went on to log on and collect my prize and booked in the hotel dates I wanted to stay. And then I realized that it was a fake. And I called up the hotel and I said, "Hey, I work in cybersecurity. I think you've been hacked." And they went and looked, and they had been.
Wow.
But now, it was sorry, go on.
What did that mean to you? Like, because some of these things are meant to just mess around with people, right? Just to have fun, see if they can just like cause mayhem. But some of this stuff is taking data or getting passwords or what have you. Like, what level was this? Like,
okay, so what did they do? So they created so the hotel was called Hotel Z. It's a small hotel chain. I guess you guys would probably call it Hotel Z down in America, but Hotel Z in Canada, because we say Z instead of Z. And they have about 4 or 5 hotels throughout BC, and they're all small, family owned. And they had their contest on their Instagram page, and it said, "Tag a few friends, and you can be eligible to win a few nights hotels and a pair of customized Converse shoes." So I tagged a few friends. The next day, I get a message from Hotel Z saying, "Hey, you've won. We want to offer you your prize. If you don't accept within 10 minutes, it's going to the next person on the list." So what they do is they create that emotional response, because you only have 10 minutes. So you immediately get excited.
Pressure.
So I clicked on the link, put in my details, and then at the end it says, "Put in your credit card info." And it says, "This is just to hold the rooms." And I mean, coming from the travel industry, you need to always give a credit card to hold a hotel. Everyone does that, right? There's no hotel in the world that will just let you put in your name and email and say, "Hey, like, honor system." But I just kind of got a bad vibe when I saw that. I thought this seems a little bit fishy, pardon the pun. And yeah, I called them up and they said, yeah, we just got hacked.
Oh,
And they cloned their page. They built an entire new Instagram page, and they had actually added several thousand people. So I mean, they were very smart in what they did. And I didn't bite, but who's to say the next person didn't or did bite? Right. And so that's the thing, is that with a lot of these companies, I did a keynote a couple weeks ago. Sorry, my nose is going a little crazy here. A couple weeks ago, I did a keynote at one of our first Vancouver tech events, and I had about 45 people in the room, and I had people just give me a show of hands of who had got one of those Amazon gift card attacks in the last year. And 3 people raised their hand out of the 40 some odd people who were there. And I told a story about how I had one last year where my old boss had sent me an email saying, hey, I want to do something nice for the team. I want you to buy everyone an Amazon gift card. Don't tell accounting. Put it on your personal expenses, and I'll give you the money back this afternoon. And I thought, wow, this guy is great. This is my old boss. I thought, what a good guy. And I asked him, I'm like, do you want me to do that right now? And he said, do what? I said, buy those gift cards. He said, what gift cards? Showed
oh,
him, I showed the computer to him, and he just said, oh my gosh, I've obviously been hacked. And it was, a business email compromise, or some people will call it domain spoofing or whatnot. So they'd somehow got into his email account. They'd cloned his email, and they had his signature. It was perfect. And I didn't bite on it. And I had those people raise their hands at the keynote. And out of those 3 people that said they'd had one, 2 of them actually went and bought those Amazon gift cards.
wow.
And I think they said they each lost about $1,000, which to a lot of people, that's not a lot of money. But these are these cyber hackers going after the low hanging fruit. They know that, depending on what facet of the business you are, you may be the secretary, you may be, the HR person. You're not used to doing this kind of stuff, but if it comes from your boss and it says their email and says, can you do this today? I'll give you the money back this afternoon. It creates that emotional response where you want to do that and you want to do it quick. And you also don't want to question your boss.
Right.
And
Oh,
how did the hackers get in? They maybe went onto LinkedIn, saw, the different people in the company and picked the name. It's not hard to find an email these days. And just plug in the, Mike.Brooks at, audit.com or whatever your email is, and, send off that email with the signature.
oh. It's and I don't want to go too far off track because these are great. I'm going to rewind a little bit because we're talking to you about how to sell cybersecurity with education and not fear, right? And that's probably you're really demonstrating how to do that because you're telling me you're sharing these stories with me, and I'm like I'm stuck on every word that you're saying. I mean, I'm like, it's like you're telling me a story.
Well,
like so.
and to kind of wrap it up, like, with Graphus, or just kind of bring Graphus into it. Graphus, obviously through our AI technology, we look at 50 different attributes. So say, Mike, you send me an email. The first time you send me an email, I'm going to get an employee shield banner that comes up on my email that says, you do not know this guy. Mike is not a trusted relationship. And so they look at 50 different attributes. So the first time you send me that email, I'm going to go, you know what? Mike's a good guy. We hung out in Vegas. Report false positive, right? If I don't know who you are, I'll say phishing. I'll just click the phishing button. And then the AI starts to learn. So now, next time you send me an email, it knows that I've approved our relationship, I guess you could call it.
Sure.
And it actually looks at 50 different attributes on your next email. And those 50 attributes are, where are you sending it from? What kind of device? What time do you send this? And it actually looks at all these different personal information, I guess you could say bits, and it decides if that email is going to be safe or not, and it gives it a score. We'll never see that score. You'll never see that score. I'll never see that score, but it's done through the system. And so, for example, that phishing email that I got from my old boss, it would have known that it wasn't coming from his computer or his IP. So it would have flagged it up, and it would actually say,
So
It actually gives you the example of the type of phishing email it is. So it would say, this email is from somebody in your organization, but it has several credentials that don't make sense. Be very careful about this email. And if I had seen that banner before I read the email, and I would have been conditioned already to know that this is something that happens,
Mhm.
I would have figured it out, but clearly the other people didn't. So
Right.
that's
And
the neat thing about our product, that it actually tells you what is the style of phishing that someone's trying to do.
it's amazing. Now I noticed that, and I'm still learning because we just started using Graphus recently. I got an email and I could tell, I knew it was, Graphus didn't know yet, but I knew what it was. And I recognized it as I think it was spam or phishing, or it was whatever it was. I clicked a button and it told me that it was pulling it out of, or at least I think it was like, thanked me for letting it know. And it's now pulling it out of my teammates' inboxes.
Yeah. So that's a big one that we do that a lot of other companies, other phishing solutions don't do. So say you got 40 people at the company, Mike, just say that's the amount. People are from, as far as London to California. And say one of your teammates in London gets an email and that's clearly phishing, you can actually report it as phishing, and they'll pull that from everyone else's inbox in the company. And a lot of the solutions don't do that. And what's great about that is, you might wake up and you don't even know that you've had these phishing emails sent to you, because they've already been pulled. And it can go into a sandbox mode. So for example, say for just one of those emails was actually a legit email, you can go back and you can have a little look later. But
Right.
it's so nice to be able to see an email no matter where you are, and you can quarantine it, and then nobody else has to deal with that. That's a
Well,
big one.
and I remember what it told me. It actually said, it's coming back to me now, because it was like, it was a couple days ago. God forbid I could remember what I even ate for breakfast. So it told me that it was quarantining it, and it was going to pull it out of the other inboxes. And if it turned out this was a real email, it will put it back.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. I think that's what am I correct in that?
Yep.
I
Yep.
read right. That is really cool. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a robust system. And I mean, AI technology is in everything we do. I mean, you turn on Netflix and it tells you what they think you're going to like based on what you've already looked at. I'm on my phone, and every day, or well, once a week, Apple Music makes a playlist for me based on all the music that I've said I've liked or downloaded. They'll make a new playlist for me based on new music, based on that algorithm. So AI technology is something that all of us are going to be using a lot more in our life. And we have those 2 AI patents with the product. And you know what? You want someone who is looking after your back when you're asleep. You want someone who doesn't get tired, who isn't taking 2-hour lunch breaks. And that's what AI does. If we want to get a little bit more in depth, it's pretty crazy to think that the technology is there. And I mean, I had one recently where we had the CEO of our company, Fred Vicola. He sent me an email, and I don't talk to Fred very often. And the email said, "Hey Miles, you've been doing some great work. Can you give me a call ASAP?" And it had his phone number. And I'm like, uh-oh, what have I done here? But it says I've done good work. And then I had a look, and I could see the employee banner, but I just looked quickly on my phone, and it said, this is coming from someone in your organization, but it's not coming from their direct computer. Like, this looks fishy. You should definitely think about opening this. And they do that for attachments. They do that for every different facet of an email. So those 50 attributes that the AI looks at, it's super interesting to think that it's not just what time you're emailing or how you're emailing. It looks at everything.
wow, that's cool. I'm going to pop up the web address here for you guys. Is graphus.ai. So if anybody's interested in learning more about Graphus, I think unless you have a different one, if you have anything different you want me to pop up
No,
here.
that's perfect. I always say as well that Mike, do you have any clue what the GDP of the USA was in 2020? It's in the trillions. I'll give you that hint.
I'm going to guess 2.5 trillion.
Okay. That's
Make it
not
sound like
bad.
I'm smart.
So USA, 20 trillion. So
It was off a little bit.
you're a couple trillion off, but you know what? To guys like me and you, that's pocket change.
Yeah, it's pocket change.
China was about 14 trillion. And then if cyber crimes as a whole were added up in trillion, by 2025, they'll make up $11 trillion. So they would be the third largest GDP on Earth.
Jeez.
So I always like to throw that out. And once again, because we're not trying to scare people, we just want to give them the facts and then they can decide. Right after the pandemic hit in March 2020, phishing attacks actually went straight down. And this is pretty crazy. I love to tell this story because lots of MSPs are like, this is the one tidbit I want to use to go in and talk with when I'm, pitching a new client on, a new service or a business unit that we're selling. And so phishing went down right at the start of the pandemic. And the reason why is because these cyber attackers or threat actors, whatever you want to call them, they had to go to a hybrid model. So they had to leave their offices where they were obviously doing cyber attacks, and they had to go home because COVID was affecting everybody. So they were just like, the IBMs and the Googles of the world. They had to leave their office and go home. And so it took about 2 weeks for them to get all set up on the systems, get their computers up and running, get everything running smoothly before they can start doing cyber attacks again. And then cyber attacks went up 770% during the pandemic. So it took 2 weeks for them to figure out everything. They had to have all of their own IT structures in place, and then they started making attacks. And I find that so crazy that people don't realize that there are these kids in basements that are doing these cyber attacks, but a lot of them are companies that are running like businesses in different parts of the world, whether it's Eastern Europe or Russia or China or North Korea. And they get paid a salary, they get paid commission when successful attacks happen, and they treat these jobs like jobs.
It's amazing. Like, I would love to talk to some of these people and find out like, hey, what do you do? I basically fool people into giving me their bank account information so I can steal their money.
Well, funnily enough, you say that. I got to give a little plug to myself here. On December 7th, I'm interviewing a guy by the name of FC. He goes by the acronym Freaky Clown. And he is known as an ethical hacker. He's one of the most famous ethical hackers in the world. He's based out of England. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually interviewing him in a couple weeks. And it's so funny when you say the word ethical hacker, because he's ethical because he got busted for doing unethical stuff, and then he got brought over. And
he got caught, and now he has to be a good guy.
Yeah, and that's always how this is. What's his name? Frank Abagnale. Catch Me If You Can.
Sure.
Leonardo DiCaprio. He spent some time in prison, and I don't know how much time he spent in prison, but it wasn't a lot, because eventually the American government got him out of prison, and they're like, we want you to help us with, finding forgeries and how these forgeries are made. And they realized, putting a guy like that in prison, he's getting punished for his deeds, but most governments know that it's way more advantageous to use those smart minds so they can stop 100 more people from doing that to others. And I'm super excited to hear him speak in a few weeks, because I talked to him briefly a couple times. We've done a promo video together, and for an ethical hacker, he's told me that now his job is he actually gets hired by large banks in America and large tech companies, and they're like, hey, go to town, try and get in, find where we're vulnerable, and find tricks and methods, and figure out where we need to ramp up our spend, because we need to find what's the worst part of our business.
Right. Wow. That's crazy. I want to listen to or watch. So when you get that, make sure to let me know. I'll share it with folks who are listening here today.
Sure.
So
yeah, I can. You know what? Let me. I'll send you the link right now.
Oh, please. I'll put
I'm super excited about this one, because some of the talks we do are with thought leaders, and some of them we get to interview people that are on the how do I put this nicely, on the spectrum of what's legal and what's not legal.
Wow.
And I find those make for the most interesting talks most of the time, because you said you wanted to pick their brain, and I actually get to pick their brain.
Yeah, I can't wait.
quite fun.
And that's, ask them that question from me. I just wonder, how do you go to work if you're treating this like a real job? You go into an office. I mean, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like organized business. As you're explaining it, they sound like business people, and like you do know you're a bad guy, right? Like, I mean, that's what you're doing. And how do you kind of not let that suck the life out of you? The last thing I would want to do is get up each day, go to work, and know that I'm doing harm to people. That's a real,
I mean, me too.
thing.
And I love the fact that I'm actually helping people, but to get up each day realizing I'm going to be stealing money from a grandmother in southern Oklahoma today, I don't know how people live with themselves at times. But to be honest, I guess it's a lot of things. It's they're down on their luck. They maybe don't have many opportunities in their town. I mean, those kind of people. I actually brought on Rachel Wilson, who's known as the Queen of the Hackers. And Rachel Wilson was one of the most senior women at the NSA. And I talked to her a couple months back. And I said to her, because part of her job was for the NSA, she would be recruiting these high-end computer analysts and programmers from the top universities. And I said, why would they ever want to work at the American government instead of at Google or Facebook or Amazon, where they could make triple the money? And she said, well, some of them, want to do good. And not all of them are driven by the mighty dollar. And she said, but often they'll come and do a couple of years with us, and they get to be exposed, and they get to do things that they would never get to do at a Google or an Amazon. And they get to learn these skills, and then they get to move on to another job. So, I guess that's part of it. But yeah, I don't know what goes through people's minds who decide to make a life of crime, but there's a lot of things that come up to it. I mean, upbringing is the big one too. That's what I learned when I talked to Tony Sales. He didn't have any positive role models in his life. And he said to me, he's like, I didn't know what to do. And he said his first thing he did when he was 7 years old, he was lowered into a pub in East London through like the top window. And then he was told to go to the front door, open the door, and let his uncles come in. So if he grew up with those people as his role models, and so that's kind of how he fell into crime. So it seems crazy to people like you and I, but it's also quite easy. That slope can be quite slippery at times.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. Well, this is a great conversation, Miles. And I posted in the comments to make sure to tune into the upcoming conversation with the ethical hacker that Miles mentioned. And I'll just read this for folks listening to the podcast, because I'm sure this page will probably be up with a replay. Am I guessing that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So let's read this off here. Go to graphus.ai/webinar-inside-the-mind-of-ethical-hacker.
Yeah.
I know that's a mouthful, but I want to make sure people get it, because that's going to be cool. So yeah, ask them that question from me.
Yeah.
And thanks for being here again, Miles. This was fantastic conversation.
Of course.
Always great catching up with you.
Yeah.
So,
and I always say, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to reach out. Miles.walker@graphus.ai. If anyone wants to hear more about the product, I mean, I don't like to give away the farm too quickly. I'm not a solutions engineer. Like we have our solutions engineers hop on our demos, but they know so much more about the intricacies of our product. I have that 30,000 foot view of the product, and I know a lot about it. But if anyone wants a demo or wants to learn more, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to connect them up with the right people. And obviously, I hope to see, if there's a lot of MSPs on the call, see some people at some of the shows coming up. I think I'm done for the year now, but 2022 we're going to start up again, and it's going to be gangbusters.
Yep, we'll be back on the road again right away, probably January.
Yeah,
little rest for Christmas and the holidays. Well, Miles, thank you. I'd wish you a happy Thanksgiving, but I missed it by about a month.
Well, at least Thanksgiving's in October for us Canadians here.
Right.
So, but happy Thanksgiving to you and the family. Don't drink. No, eggnog's Christmas. So, what do you guys drink for Thanksgiving?
Same thing I drink all the time: wine, bourbon,
beer, whiskey, whatever
is your favorites. So,
all right.
Thank you, Miles. Thanks for being here, and thank you everybody for listening. As always, until next time, keep on elevating IT.